We are ready for our next chapter, which is going to be alternate and open tunings. One of the simplest alternate tunings to use is known as drop D. In drop D, you tune your low E string down a whole step to D, and that's it. So you end up with D, A, D, G, B, E. And you hear drop D all over the place. Bob Dylan, It's All Right Ma, It's a Boy, Pete Townsend, Cinnamon Girl from Neil Young, Run Like Hell, Pink Floyd. And it's just a great way to get a really full sound on acoustic guitar. So since we just came out of the finger picking section, I'd like to show you a riff that combines finger picking with the use of drop D. And I'm going to move triadic shapes down the neck to create this finger picking pattern. Here we go. All right, starting with the D triad up in 10th position. And I'm using my Travis picking, so you pick those two together. But then the second time, I use the open high E string. And then I'm going to move down to C. And then G with a B bass. That shape, G minor, then I have D, which I use a bar with the index finger, which is a little tricky. You got to get your finger up so you can get that open high E string in there. Down a C to G. And then at the end here, I use a F major 9, you could call it. Like that. And then end on this voicing of D major. And you can get the high E string in there too if you want, like a add 2 sound. Drop D tuning is also great for all kinds of alternative rock. One of the things, and also for heavy metal and stuff like that, one of the things guys like that for is because you can get power chords just by barring across the bottom 3 strings. If you strum the bottom 3 strings, that's a D5 power chord. At the 3rd fret, that's F5, G5. So you'll hear that in Alice in Chains and Rage Against the Machine and Pearl Jam. Drop D is also great for all kinds of blues kind of playing because of those open strings. So you could play something along these lines, very bluesy, and it makes the most out of that real low open D. A really great alternate tuning is known as Dad Gad, which is D, A, D, G, A, D. So it's a perfect jump off from drop D tuning. The bottom 3 strings are just like drop D, as is the G string, but the top 2 strings go down a whole step as well, so the B string goes down to A, and the high E string goes down to D. So when you strum across all the strings, you get a D sus4 chord. And it sounds nice to play harmonics. And you hear Jimmy Page do that on Black Mountain Side. He's using this tuning, and you hear it in all kinds of English folk music by stuff by guys like Bert Yance and also Alex DeGrassi and Michael Hedges, these pioneers of acoustic guitar music and experimental acoustic guitar music. If you want the sound of a root fifth chord, all you have to do is go 2 frets higher on the G string, and that creates the sound of D5. So, if you bar across, that would be F sus4, go 2 frets higher on the G string. That's F5, G sus4, G5, A sus4, A5, B flat sus4 to B flat 5, C sus4 to C5. If we go 2 frets higher on the D string instead of on the G string, you get suspended second chords. You can play on the bottom 3 strings, and you hear this in alternative rock all the time. It's a great sound. So if we bar across the 10th fret, but go 2 frets higher on the D string, that's C sus2, that would be A sus2, G sus2, F sus2, G sus2, E sus2, D sus2. Now let's combine those 2 ideas and bar across the D and the G string 2 frets higher than the bottom 2 strings, and we'll additionally add the B string in there. So if you play this, you get the sound of a D6 sus2. Go 3 frets higher. That's F6 sus2. This fingering would normally give you just a 5th string root C bar chord, but in this tuning, it creates a whole different sound, and here it's F6 sus2. So here's a rhythm part using these chord voicings. 1, 2, 3, and... The beauty of using open tunings and alternate tunings is that you can do very simple things on the fretboard but get really cool sounds. Simple things such as just fretting a single note and moving it around up and down one string, or fretting 2 notes, and the sounds you come up with are always very interesting and different just from doing very little. So in this finger picking pattern, I'm going thumb, ring, thumb, index. As I said before, some people would prefer middle. Like that. I prefer my ring. And then I'm just moving up the D string in the D major scale. Go backwards as well. All right, let's take the same idea, and instead of sliding up 1 string, let's slide up 2 strings, and we're going to fret them at the same fret. All right, so we started with a very similar pattern, just doing the same picking pattern. But I'm fretting 2nd fret of the G and the B string. Move up 1 fret. 2 frets. 2 more. 2 more. It's really nice how you have seconds apart between the G string and the B string. 1 fret, 2, 2, and I ended with a D7 that you get that way, and then a little open string riff because you can get some really cool sounds that you would never get, you'd be able to get in a regular tuning. And I ended with a nice natural harmonic thing at the end because the tuning gives you the sound of a suspended chord. It sounds good. All right, let's take the idea of fretting 2 notes and just sliding them around along with all the open strings in another place. And what I'm going to do is fret notes on the G and the high E string and really accentuate the ringing sound of all of the strings. And this is in DADGAD tuning, and this is the kind of thing you hear Jimmy Page do all the time, and you hear it in Celtic folk music, and then the influence that had on acoustic rock music through the 70s. Here we go. Now when you're strumming all these open strings like this, it almost gives the effect of a 12 string. It sounds like a lot more than 6 strings going on. So all I'm doing is lowering the note on the G string and keeping the top note the same. So like a D sus4 to a D, C sus4 to C over D bass, A sus4 to A over D bass, and that's like G sus4 over D to G, and then I played a little blues type riff utilizing the open strings. A great twist on DADGAD is to drop the 2 low strings down another whole step. So you, instead of having D-A-D on the bottom, you're going to have C-G-D, C-G-D, G-A-D. This is a tuning used all the time by Kaki King, and 2 guys that also use that tuning known for it are Michael Hedges, Alex DeGrassi, Preston Reed. It's a really interesting tuning. It's a very weird C kind of a chord. If you just put your second finger on the D string, you get sort of this C major 6th sound. And again, great thing to do is just put your fingers down and bar and then move one finger and listen to what you get. And you can find all kinds of interesting possibilities that you would never get otherwise. So here's an example of exactly that. So I'm fretting notes on the D and the B string with all the other open strings, but focusing on the top 4 strings. So that's like a C chord. This is like C7 to sort of an F chord. And that's C7. Kind of a C sus2. And then this is kind of an F sound, which then resolves to a C sound. It's really nice to get that add 2 on top, or add 9. And then I played a little single note riff. with a natural harmonic. All right, now let's move from the alternate tunings to some open tunings. One of the most popular open tunings is open D. So what I'm doing is, when I strum all the open strings, I get the sound of a D chord, and the most common open D tuning would be D, A, D, just like Dadgad, but G goes down a half step to F sharp, the major third of D, A, D. And basically it's the same as if you were to play an E chord in a standard first position way, but everything is down a whole step. Likewise, if you wanted the equivalent in an open E tuning, all of these strings would go up a whole step. So if you strum across all the open strings, that creates the sound of a D chord. Just bar across all the strings. That's F, G, A, C, D. Open tunings like this are used for blues all the time. So open D, likewise, is perfect for blues riffs. So here's one right here. So this is in the key of D. So that's like something you would do in E, because your top two strings are now down a whole step, so it sounds D, or in the key of D instead of E. But right here, it's cool you can use that open D string because that's another root note. And then here, I get three Ds. It's three-dimensional. So I pull up, and then throw another fretted D on top. And open D is especially good for rhythm guitar parts played on acoustic guitar. You can really pound on them, and you'll hear stuff like this in the music of Rod Stewart with Ronnie Wood on guitar, and in the Black Crowes. And one of the things that's cool is pounding those open strings and just barring across. You can also just add two fingers to the chord and get a different sound. And Keith Richards, you hear him do this kind of thing all the time. Here's an example. All right, so I started with just a D chord, but I can create a G with a D bass just by fretting second fret of the A string and first fret of the G string. So it's a brief reference to the 4 chord. So I just moved that up to the 5th fret for G to C with the G bass. And then A to D with an A bass, very Keith Richards. And then I ended with, so this little, and you hear this all over Rod Stewart's early work with Ronnie Wood, like Maggie May and Every Picture Tells a Story, stuff like that. Another great thing to do when you're using open tunings is to use sixths and slide them around just as we've been doing before with pedal tones. Here's a riff where I'm going to be playing sixths on the 5th and 3rd string, and it's a great way to add melodic content to a steadily driving rhythm part. Here you go. 1, 2, 3, and... All right, so moving from D, basically the sound of G over D. So this is the same sort of thing we were doing before, but we're taking those 2-note shapes and moving them up the neck to get these different. There's D7. So you're either going to be fretting on the same fret, or you're going to be fretting one fret apart. The index finger or the note on the G string is going to be one fret lower than the note on the A string. So it's easy to memorize something like that, and then you can create these melodies. Built into the rhythm part. Another of the most commonly used open tunings for chords is open G tuning. Open G is D, G, D, G, B, D. So what happens with this tuning is the D, G, and B strings stay normal, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings. High E goes down a whole step to D, A goes down a whole step to G, E goes down a whole step to D. And there's tons and tons of great old acoustic blues music played in this tuning by Robert Johnson and John Lee Hooker, and then some guys that came along later like Johnny Winter and Ry Cooder. They love open G tuning, and Warren Haynes. You hear it all the time. It's a great tuning. And then you also hear it in the playing of Keith Richards and Ronnie Wood. And it's great for blues. So just like we had done with our open E tuning, when you strum across all the open strings, you get a chord, so that's G. Go to the 3rd fret, B flat, 5th fret, C. 7th is a D chord, 10th fret is an F chord, 12th fret, that's a G chord. So this next example is going to be a classic blues Robert Johnson kind of a rhythm part that is played in an open G tuning. 1, 2, 3, and. All right, so I started with, it's a real classic Robert Johnson kind of chord shape here. 7, 6, 5 creates a really nice sounding G7 chord, and then you just move the note on the B string down 1 fret. Fourth bar. So now I'm just barring across the 3rd fret of the top 2 strings, and this is another kind of G7 voicing to a G5. And you'll hear this kind of thing on Johnny Winter's song Dallas, and you also hear it on Sleepy John Estes' Brownsville. And then you go to, so the 4 chord you just bar straight across, but reach up to the 8th fret on the top 2 strings. Back to the initial figure. Then for the 5 chord D, I'm just fretting 2nd fret on the G, 1st fret on the B. Here for the 4 chord C, I'm using C with an E bass. 2nd fret on the D, open G, 1st fret on the B. So it's just a nice way to go from the 5 to the 4. Back to the initial figure. And then this is kind of a typical Johnny Winter. And this here the kind of thing you hear in John Lee Hooker's music, and then borrowed to great effect by ZZ Top. All right, as I mentioned before, Keith Richards, real big on open G, and you hear songs like Brown Sugar and Start Me Up, and I mean so many songs. Happy's another great one where Keith used an open G tuning. And the thing he likes to do is just strum the open strings and then add 2 frets higher on the D and 1 fret higher on the B to make that quick reference to the 4 chord. And it's a real nice sound. So here's a rhythm part played in Keith Richards style using these voicings. 1, 2, 3, and... So I'm just alternating. And then when I got up to F, I just hung out there. And that's cool too. That kind of thing, and you'll hear that on Can't You Hear Me Knockin' also. A really great alternate tuning is the tuning Jimmy Page used on the Rain song, and it's an easy jumping off point from where we just have been. And that's D, G, C, G. So just like an open G tuning, D, G, but instead of having a D for the D string, that drops down a whole step to C. D, G, C, G, but then B goes up to C, and then you have a D on top. So you can see it's a lot like the open G tuning. We're only changing the D string and the B string. So one more time, D, G, C, G, C, D. And it's weird, it's sort of this combo between what sounds like a G tuning and a C tuning at the same time. And this tuning lends itself especially well to sliding those 2-note double stops around while strumming across all the strings and getting that kind of ringing 12-string kind of a sound. I'm just sliding the 2 notes around, fretting on the D and the B string, and I'm playing notes from a G major scale. So you have all these G's ringing, and then a lot of D's ringing. 3 different D's in that voicing right there. So, and then it's a real nice way to get the sound of a straight G chord. 2nd fret, 4th fret. Just played a nice G major pentatonic riff here. Another really great alternate tuning is the one David Crosby used on Crosby, Stills, Nash tune, Guinevere. It's a very unusual tuning. And it's like an E7 sus4 when you strum across all the strings. You've got E, B, D, G, A, and D. So it's actually like E minor 7 add 4. And here's a little figure that is along the lines of the kind of thing David Crosby uses this tuning for. 1, 2, 3, So I start by picking the low E with the B string together and allowing everything to ring. G string, D string. And this sounds really cool because you have half steps apart between a C sharp note and a D note. It's an unusual sound. And then I pick the high E with the fretted D and slide up. A nice twist on this tuning is a great tuning that Stephen Stills from Crosby, Stills & Nash used all the time. It's called Bruce Palmer modal tuning, named after his bandmate from Buffalo Springfield. And it's all E's and B's. We got E, B, E, and then the G string goes down to E. So two unison E's on the what would normally be the D and the G string, fourth and third string. B, E. E, B, E, E, B, E. And you hear Stephen Stills use this tuning on Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, 4 and 20, Carry On. It's really a beautiful ringing tuning, and you can do all kinds of raga-like sitar sounds just by sliding a couple notes around while strumming across all the strings. I'll show you what I mean. 1, 2, 3, and... All right, so I'm getting these octave sounds on the D and the high E string, fretted at the same fret, and then I just strum across all the strings at the same time. So it's real easy. You could just slide around. Using those shapes. I got a fourth relationship here. So this would be like an E. This is a B and an E. And then you get octaves, same fret on the 6th and the 4th string. Then I do that again. Now this is a real cool thing with this tuning is you can bar on the low strings at a certain fret and then 2 frets lower on the high string, and you get this neat 7 sus4 sound. This would be A7 sus4, move down a whole step to G7 sus4. So it's really nice. And then I move back to that initial figure.